Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the remote meeting of the Technology Committee. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation and ask for your cooperation and patience. During the meeting, all participants on Zoom, except for board members and South Coast staff, will be placed on mute by the host. This means you will not be able to unmute or mute yourselves manually, but after each agenda item, the chair will announce public comment. For those on Zoom, if you'd like to make a public comment, on the Zoom screen, please click on the raise hand button, which is typically at the bottom of your screen. This will signal that you would like to provide comments and you will be added to the list. If you're using Zoom on your smartphone, please tap the raise hand button on the bottom of the screen. And for those of you calling in on the telephone, you may dial *9 on your keypad, and that will signal that you'd like to make public comment. If you are indeed making public comment, please adhere to the speaker time limit. So that will be at the chair's discretion on how many minutes you have, but typically it's 3. We ask that all participants adhere to the normal guidelines for public decorum, specifically treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. And I see that our chairman has joined. So Chairman, we just did the opening housekeeping remarks, and we turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you. Thank you all for joining us, and welcome to the Technology Committee. Today is February 19th. Welcome. And for those listening, members of the public, appreciate you joining us. With that, let's establish a quorum and let's conduct a roll call, please.
Supervisor Bartlett.
Here.
Board Member Krakow. Mayor McCallum.
Here.
Vice Mayor Richardson. Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez. Not here. And Councilmember Buscaino.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you. Let's now move on to the agenda, and let's take item number 1, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tom Lee, and this item is to amend contracts and execute contracts for the EFMP program. Next slide, please. This program is branded as Replace Your Ride in the South Coast Air Basin. It's been running for 6 years. We have funded over 7,600 clean vehicles with a funding amount of roughly $60 million. 64% of the funded vehicles are of the cleanest technologies, such as battery electric and plug-in hybrids, and the rest are hybrids and high MPG gasoline vehicles. This program also allows pre-owned vehicles as replacements, and 63% of participants purchase pre-owned to lower the cost of ownership. Now, we've met objectives of taking the highest polluters off the road, with the average age of the scrap vehicle being 20 years old and roughly 180,000 miles. The program also served disadvantaged and low-income communities, as you can see by the high percentages of participants from both. Now, currently, the program is in a moratorium because funds are fully subscribed. We're waiting for new funding from CARB, which is expected to arrive in a few months. The program uses 3 case management contractors, and their contracts are currently running out of funds. And 3 contractors still being used currently to process roughly 500 applications to exhaust the remaining funds. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, thanks. Now we're proposing to add funds to each of the 3 contractors for continued case management support. For both Foundation for California Community Colleges and Green Paradigm Consulting, we're adding up to $450,000 for each. For Opus Inspection Inc., we're proposing to add $500,000. This contractor also provides emission testing services for the program. which is why we're proposing to add a bit more funding. These funds are estimated to last roughly 12 months. We're also proposing to execute a new contract with Veritax to streamline the income verification process for applicants. This will improve efficiency as the direct process we do with IRS is very cumbersome and time-consuming. And this contract is also being utilized by the other EFMP contractors, the other EFMP programmers, and we're getting a lower rate because of that volume discount. We'll be charged $10 per use, and the total of $60,000 will be sufficient for the life of the program, which we're estimating to be about 10 years. Next slide, please. The recommended actions are to amend 3 contracts to add funds to the case management contractors from the admin portion of HEROES 2 Special Revenue Fund 56, and to execute a new contract with Veritax, also from the admin portion of HEROES 2 Special Revenue Fund 56. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Appreciate you. Colleagues, any questions on the presentation, item number 1? Please raise your virtual hand. Mr. McCallum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious as to how much pollution NOx have been reduced and what is the cost effectiveness or the cost per ton of reduction that we've had?
I currently don't have the emission reduction numbers in hand, but we can certainly get back to you on these numbers.
Yeah, I'd like to know how much this program is reducing NOx and what it's costing per ton.
We can get that for you, Mayor. As you know, this is a state implemented program, so they provide the funds to us. And as you know, it's the state's not super focused on NOx at times, but we can get that information for you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Let's see, any other questions, comments from members? Seeing none, let's take public comment. Any members of the public wish to speak on item number 1, please bring them forward. I don't see any.
No raised hands.
Okay, no raised hands. Thank you so much. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve item number 1.
Bartlett, move to approve.
Okay.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, on item 1.
Supervisor Bartlett,
Yes.
Mayor McCallum,
Yes.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Yes?
Item passes 3 ayes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Let's now turn to item number 2. Ms. Yan, for item number 2.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Alyssa Yan. This agenda item is to adopt the resolution to recognize funds for the fiscal year 2020 to 21 Carl Moyer Program Award and issue program announcements. Next slide, please. For year 23, we have received a tentative allocation from ARB in the amount of over $34 million. The final allocation from ARB will be determined later this February when the final revenues are received and after ARB has the final list of air districts who will be participating in this year's Carl Moyer program. The required local match is about 15% of the total allocation from ARB, which provides us with a tentative total amount of $39 million in funds for year 23. Next slide, please. The funding proposed for the program announcement are $27 million, comprised of both Moyer and AB 923 funds for year 23 Carl Moyer program, and $5 million comprised of the remaining Moyer funds for the soon provision. I would like to note that similar to previous years, any unused Moyer funds from years prior, including interest and available AB 923 funds, may also be used to fund eligible projects for year 23. We may also rely on other funding sources such as CAP, State Reserve, and Farmer if these funds become available. All awarded applicants will be assigned funds, and this will be presented when the awards are announced. Next slide, please. We'll be focusing on 3 major project categories, the first being on-road heavy-duty vehicles. This includes trucks, transit buses, solid waste, public agency utility vehicles, as well as emergency vehicles. The second category is off-road equipment, which is comprised of construction, agricultural, and cargo handling equipment, as well as locomotive and marine vessels. For these 2 categories, we'll be evaluating all projects and focusing on cost-effective projects that can demonstrate emission reductions within a disadvantaged community, and cost-effective projects that have applied multiple years in a row that may not have received funding in years prior. Next slide, please. For the third and final category, we'll be supporting infrastructure projects that support zero and near zero heavy-duty vehicles, with a focus on providing funding in disadvantaged and low-income communities. For all the 3 categories, our overall goal is to provide 60% of funding for projects located in a disadvantaged community, and the remaining 40% of funding will be geared toward non-disadvantaged community cost-effective projects. Next slide, please. We have set the following schedule for this program year, where we will issue the Carl Moyer and soon program announcements on March 5th. Application workshops will be virtual in light of COVID this year, and we plan to have these workshop presentations available on the South Coast AQMD website and YouTube channel, and we'll be promoting these workshops via e-blasts. We'll also be conducting outreach with AB 617 communities, in addition to working with various utilities to promote the Carl Moyer program and soon to small and minority businesses. This year, we'll also provide virtual assistance to applicants as requested, and we anticipate that we'll provide awards to be considered by the board in the October-November timeframe of this year. Next slide, please. The recommended actions moving forward is to first adopt resolution recognizing up to $35 million from ARB into the Carl Moyer program SB 1107 Fund 32. And second, to issue program announcements to solicit projects for the fiscal year 2020 to 21 Carl Moyer program and soon provision. Thank you so much for your time. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Yan. Appreciate you. Members, any questions? We have Supervisor Bartlett.
Thank you, Chair Boscaino. I just want to look forward to the year 23 of the Carl Moyer program, which has been really impactful. And I'm pleased to see the funding distribution, which has a target of 60% of funds going towards projects domiciled in disadvantaged and low-income communities, and that's great. But also that 40% may go towards the very cost-effective projects. Looking at the project cost effectiveness is really important and can certainly provide emission reductions that benefit the entire basin. And with that, I'd like to really thank Matt and his team for the work they've done to make sure that the dollars provide the best benefits to the basin and with the recipient of awards and the community as a whole. So great teamwork. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing that. Mayor McCallum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just relieve me of my ignorance. What's AB 923 funds?
Vicky, do you want to answer that?
Sure. AB 923 is a legislation that allows $2 DMV registration fees. That's $2 per vehicle registered in the South Coast AQMD to be used by the South Coast AQMD for Carl Moyer program eligible projects. So it is our local funds that we use as a match to participate in the Carl Moyer program.
Good, thank you. As you know, Metrolink, which I sit on, has benefited greatly from the Carl Moyer program in terms of getting the Tier 4 engines procured and running on our system. So I appreciate all of the efforts of staff in this area. It's an important program, and glad to see it's getting additional funding.
Thank you, sir. With that, any members of the public wish to speak on item 2, please come forward now. Looks like we have one hand raised. No?
Yep, Colin, user 1.
Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon, board members. This is Ranji George. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. My biggest concern is, even though cost effectiveness is a very important tool to evaluate projects, what we will have is an issue that will always be dug into one technology. For last 20 years, AQMD has not, I apologize to say this, but has not been very proactive on greenhouse gases. And as a result, and as put cost effective right at the top, as a result, compared to the three technologies, natural gas, batteries, and fuel cells, natural gas has taken 80–90% of the lion's share of the funds in the several funding opportunities provided. I urge you to be more long-term in your thinking, investments into the future, as any good portfolio manager would recommend for stock investments. You should have some for immediate, some medium, and for long-term, because that's, mitigates the risk and really gives the best value for your investment. So I urge you, as board members, if you have any influence, to broaden the definition of cost effectiveness to include both short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Just to illustrate, if cost effectiveness is the only criteria, diesel and the low NOx diesel would have been the most cost-effective. I'm sure there's no argument on that. But if that is it, we'll never would have gone into these other technologies. So I urge you to just to broaden your thinking and put greenhouse gas up front in your battle, and include sustainable batteries and hydrogen fuel cells going into the future. Get substantially more from these Moyer funds. That's what I'm specifically requesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George, for your testimony. Thank you for joining us. With that, members, I'll entertain a motion to approve item 2 on the agenda.
Callan moves.
Richardson, second.
Thank you. Was that a voice of God, or is that Vice Mayor Richardson?
They released me from the Stationary Source Committee. I am here.
Mr. Richardson, thank you so much. Your first Technology Committee meeting, and welcome aboard. Looking forward to working with you in advancing technologies that will continue to reduce emissions in our base, in our district. Really excited about your appointment, and you're going to be a great addition to our team here. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. A roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Bartlett,
Yes.
Mayor McCallum,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Yes.
4 ayes, item passes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Let's now move, colleagues, to item number 3. Item number 3 is now before us. Is it Mr. Barroca going to join us?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon, Chair and board members, and thank you. My name is Phil Barroca, and this is a request to extend a demonstration project with CORE. And you're on the next slide. Great. Okay, so by way of background, CORE is to demonstrate their pyrolysis technology to convert biomass to RNG and perform the necessary tests and collect data to assess the technology. What is pyrolysis? Again, pyrolysis is the thermal conversion of organic solids to syngas in the absence of oxygen. So the process essentially converts a solid to gas without combustion. The products of pyrolysis are syngas that includes hydrogen and methane, and the remaining solid, known as biochar, has value as a soil amendment. We provided an update on the project status to the committee last May. At that time, we pointed out the impacts that the global pandemic was having on the project, including construction restrictions and access to capital. The board recognized these conditions in last June's board actions and provided CORE with a 6-month extension to complete testing and data collection as soon as it was able to meet the City of Los Angeles's COVID restrictions. Next slide, please. Subsequent to board action last June, South Coast, SoCal Gas, and CORE commenced bi-monthly virtual meetings to keep updated on the project developments. By October, the group was informed that CORE had received clarification and confirmation from the city that would allow it to resume construction efforts at the Olympic site, This would, in effect, start the 6-month clock and require completion of testing by April of this year. In response to city requirements, CORE developed and implemented the necessary work site health improvements. And in November, CORE informed this group that all necessary capital had been secured to complete the project. So finally, CORE was able to resume their work efforts at the start of December, effectively 2 months subsequent to the lift on restrictions. This was accompanied by a revised land use agreement with SoCalGas that terms out at the end of this year. Next slide. So just to refamiliarize everyone with the Olympic site work, these are some photos showing the progress that has been made at the Olympic site. This one is showing the initial installation of the pyrolyzer unit and some of the follow-on work with the char conveyor and feed conveyor, and also some of the water and gas piping that's already been installed. Next slide. And some additional site photos. At left is a north view before and after, showing the additional gas and water piping that's been installed. The middle photo shows the drive motor side of the pyrolyzer. That will turn the screw, conveyor, and auger to advance the feedstock in the pyrolyzer. And at right are some of the photos of equipment that have already been purchased and delivered and are ready to be installed, and also the cooling tower and pumps that are already installed. And CORE is currently operating a 5-day work week at the Olympic site. Next slide. So this action is to request additional time beyond April to complete testing and data collection. Staff proposes to resume in-person monitoring and to provide any feedback and reporting to this committee. And with that, I'll be happy to answer some questions.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate the presentation. If I recall, we have a representative from SoCalGas on the line.
Yes, sir, Chair Buscaino. This is Naveen Berry.
Oh, Naveen, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And Matt Grigori, who's the Technology Development Manager for SoCalGas, will provide a brief overview of their part in this particular project. They're our project partners with CORE, as well as their outlook on renewable fuels. So Matt, if you can do your presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, Mr. Chair and the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Matt Grigori. I'm a Technology Development Manager in the Research, Development, and Demonstration Group at SoCalGas. Next slide, please. So at SoCalGas, our mission is to build the cleanest, safest, most innovative energy company in America. At SoCalGas, we believe that every Californian deserves a clean, affordable, and resilient energy future. The SoCalGas Research, Development, and Demonstration Program, or the RD&D program, plays a key role in this effort. Decarbonization in general and hydrogen specifically have become a significant focus for the RD&D team. These are just a few examples of research topics we're exploring around production of clean hydrogen using advanced microchannel reactors that were developed by researchers at the Pacific Northwest National Lab, transportation of clean hydrogen through our pipes using and extraction at the endpoints using electrochemical separation and compression technology, and carbon capture and sequestration using new materials to capture emissions from stationary sources and convert those emissions into useful and durable products. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about the CORE pyrolyzer demonstration project and how it fits into our transition and new focus on hydrogen. Since the inception of this project in 2017, the focus of the research has been around the pyrolyzer technology. That's really the key technology gap we're investigating. And from the pyrogas or syngas stage, where we originally envisioned moving towards an RNG final product, we now envision the opportunity and the option to produce renewable hydrogen from that pyrogas. So while our overall scope, our overall focus on renewable gas has changed somewhat over the last few years, we still see this pyrolyzer technology as a key technology to enable renewable gas production in a hydrogen space. Next slide, please. As far as project timeline goes, We have issued several contract extensions over the years, and each of these extensions was predicated upon demonstration of real progress in the project. 2018, much of the time was spent securing permits, and once those permits were secured, we were confident in moving forward with the project. And over the last couple of years, as construction has progressed on the site, we continue to be supportive of continuing the project. This year, as Phil mentioned, we are communicating very closely with Core and South Coast staff, and we're tracking construction milestones very carefully to confirm project completion at the end of this year. And next slide, please. And finally, SoCalGas continues to be supportive of this project. We're contributing more than just our research funding. We're also providing project management support, communication, and coordination assistance. As we mentioned, we're meeting bi-weekly in order to facilitate communication between all of the stakeholders supporting the project. We're providing the space at Olympic Base. We are providing gas service for the system to provide not just thermal resources, but also power generation for the site, and distributing regular emails in order to inform all of the relevant stakeholders as the project continues. Next slide. So with that, I'm open for questions. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Mr. Grigori, for joining us this afternoon. I'll turn it out to colleagues, members. Any questions for either Phil or Mr. Grigori? Supervisor Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So UC Irvine is definitely a leader in the field of study and has been a really strong partner with the district. The work tremendously is very much important to the region, especially given the various scenarios. This could provide benefits such as public safety power shutoff events and the like, which we've had from time to time and all too often. So it's a great way for us to be able to partner with other entities. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor, for sharing that. Wholeheartedly agree with your comment. Okay, let's see any other colleagues. Seeing none, let's turn to public comment. Members of the public like to speak on item 3. We have Mr. George on the call. You can start his time, please. Mr. George, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Right, thank you. Yes, I have just a clarification. My name is Ranji George. I was with the Technology Advancement Office for 27 years or more, working on fuel cells and battery technology. So I would like a question for maybe Matt, Naveen, or for the presenter. When we were looking at biogas, renewable gas as we call it today, from all sources, landfill, waste, other sources, forget sewer gas, even dairy waste gas, we didn't come beyond 10 to 15% of all our energy needs. Has that figure been updated? Do you have some of the latest figures on it? And number 2, how does the proposed pyrolysis technology compare with other countries move into this technology? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Chairman, did you want us to try to address that?
If you'd like. I know there's no, exchange with, but go ahead, Matt.
Only that the comment is a common refrain we hear from various folks is, if there aren't sufficient renewable feedstocks to supply a large proportion of the transportation system, there is a question on the utility of it. And I would just simply refer the question to Matt and SoCalGas and to others, is that if there is a feedstock that can be readily converted to transportation fuel, why wouldn't we want to do it?
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, members, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item number 3.
Happy to move to approve item 3.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Mayor McCallum will second. Thank you. Roll call vote.
Supervisor Bartlett,
Yes.
Mayor McCallum,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
and Chairman Buscaino.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 ayes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Members, let's now turn to item number 4. Item number 4 is now before us.
Good afternoon. This item is to execute 4 contract of hydrogen infrastructure related project. Next slide, please. Now we are facing more demand for hydrogen infrastructure as more fuel cell vehicles are deploying and more electric vehicles are required to secure the resiliency and reliability of the electricity system, especially for emergent PSPS events. In hydrogen infrastructure side, in order to deploy more fuel cell vehicles, scaling up hydrogen infrastructure is one of the critical elements to support increasing fuel cell vehicles. This requires not only a high-level plan for deployment and operation of hydrogen infrastructure, but also researches for specific design of hydrogen stations, especially for medium heavy-duty vehicles, and fueling equipment with more efficient fueling performance since their tank is much larger than light-duty vehicles one. In the meantime, it is important to recognize hydrogen's role currently and existing policies to identify gaps over the next 5 to 10 years. To address the resiliency and reliability of the electricity system, microgrid using fuel cell technology is getting more interest. Microgrid can provide closed loop for generation and utilization of electricity and hydrogen, which means it can provide both hydrogen and electricity and store the energy at the same time. Transit hub with many zero-emission buses and critical facilities demand a reliable electricity source, and fuel cell microgrid can support grid in PSPS events. And even in the regular days, it can help users to minimize their electricity costs by reducing demand charges. Next slide, please. The first project is for development of high-flow bus fueling protocol with Frontier Energy. This project has been selected by US DOE H2S scale program. Currently, SAE J2601 is only the standard protocol for light-duty sectors, and there is no standard for medium heavy-duty. This results in challenges with selection of suppliers for fueling equipment and purchasing of new fleet vehicles from multiple providers, as we have seen the same issue of no standard chargers in early days of electric vehicles. This project will apply light-duty standard protocol to 35 megapascal onboard storage system for heavy-duty vehicles with 8035 high-flow receptacles. In the project, NREL will simulate the developed protocol using their models, and in-use testing also will be done as Sunline. This protocol can be developed in this project can be used for not only transit buses, but also other type of medium heavy-duty sectors. Next slide, please. Project cost is $572,500 and requested funding amount is $25,000. Frontier Energy will contract with NREL and then with South Coast AQMD and other partners individually. Next slide, please. The second project is for heavy-duty hydrogen infrastructure research partnership. This project is also selected by H2S scale program, and it will focus on heavy-duty application, which aims to develop reference station design with large dispensing capacity and high flow rate for heavy-duty fuel cell trucks, such as Class A long-haul applications. This work will also analyze the station design matrix for various flow rate, vehicle capacities, and demand profiles for multiple station configurations, including on-site production and delivery. Next slide, please. Total project cost is about 1.1 billion and requested funding is 25K for NREL. Next slide, please. This is the third project for UC Davis, California Hydrogen System Analysis. This project will assess existing policies and what else is specifically needed to move toward building a carbon neutral hydrogen system over the next 5 to 10 years. The model in this project will consider the potential to enhance renewable hydrogen generation, cost optimal expansion of hydrogen infrastructures as well. This research also includes better understanding of hydrogen's role in transportation and in energy storage, including B2G and P2G technology. Project team will leverage other recent studies for nationwide roadmap of hydrogen economy and specified for California. All the results from this project will help us to evaluate future scenario for fuel cell vehicles adoption and hydrogen infrastructure deployment. Next slide, please. Total project funding over 600,000 has been committed by public and private partners, and requested funding is 50K. Potential additional organizations have been invited, and they are considering co-funding into this project. Next slide, please. The last project is to study microgrid-based electricity system using fuel cell and hydrogen technology. This project includes 2 soft tasks, and UCI will leverage their existing infrastructure, such as microgrid modeling resource and both battery electric and fuel cell buses operating in their campus. The first task will identify alternative technology that can replace diesel backup generators with a focus on hydrogen and estimate the emission reduction impact associated with this fuel cell microgrid. The second task will address electric charging and hydrogen fueling hub by developing rollout plan to charge and fuel 100% zero emission fleet of battery and fuel cell buses. The result of this analysis can be also used for microgrid hub for charging and fueling zero emission medium and heavy duty drayage fleets and utility and long haul vehicles. Next slide, please. The total project cost is $510,000 and requested funding amount is $370,000. Next slide, please. The recommended actions are to execute 4 contracts from Clean Fuel Fund with Frontier Energy to provide $25K to support high flow bus fueling protocol development with NREL to develop hydrogen station research for heavy duty vehicles in an amount of $25K, and with UC Davis hydrogen system analysis in $50K. And the last contract will provide $370K for UCI to support their fuel cell microgrid study. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. We have members have some questions. We'll start with Mr. Richardson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So staff recommended that I use this statement to disclose my position with the agency. So for on this item, I don't have a financial interest, but I'm required to identify for the record that I'm the Vice Mayor of the City of Long Beach, and the Port of Long Beach is involved in this item. So I need to say that. But
Thank you so much.
the program seems great. I'm learning a little more about hydrogen, and we certainly need we're committed in Long Beach to the bridge to zero, and it requires infrastructure on both sides, zero and near zero emission vehicles. And so I'm certainly supportive of this program and look forward to seeing the results of this study. Thanks.
You're here. Thank you so much, Vice Mayor Richardson. Supervisor Bartlett.
Thank you. Just I kind of got ahead of myself on my notes, and I just realized that my comments were on the wrong items. So the comments I made about UC Irvine being a leader in the field and a great partner with the district actually pertains to this item and could provide those additional benefits such as the public safety power shutoff events. Thank you so much.
All good. Thank you. Mayor McCallum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As everyone knows, I think the future of zero emission is really hydrogen fuel cell because of the battery issues that will be faced in the future. In fact, San Bernardino County is is pioneering and developing a zero emission multiple unit, which is a picture in my background, using a hydrogen fuel cell technology to use on the Metrolink system and during non-peak hours. I've also been preaching that we need to have microgrids to isolate our transportation systems, our transportation hubs, because when the power goes off, how are you going to recharge batteries and other things if you don't isolate yourself from the grid? So as you recall, Matt, we visited a hydrogen cell microgrid facility. I forget where that was at.
It was a hospital, I think.
It was a hospital somewhere, and that was an amazing setup. Yep. So I'm very supportive of this effort.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, let's turn to public comment. Mr. George, Ranji George, your hand's up. If you can please unmute yourself and start his clock. Unmute yourself, Ranji.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me, please?
Loud and clear. Go ahead, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, board members. My name is Ranji George. As a way of background, I worked in the Technology Advancement Office for over 25 years, specializing in batteries, fuel cells, and towards the later in implementing natural gas technologies. I thank you for the comments Mayor McCallan said about fuel cells. Thank you for acknowledging, realizing that batteries can pose a huge problem going forward, and we should be immediately planning for that. Instead of non-sustainable battery pathway, we should accept a more sustainable pathway if possible. And of course, hydrogen fuel cells will not have the amount of waste that batteries will be generating in the future. So in this context, thank you for the presenter and the projects. Only thing, one small comment I had, but it's important, is as we go for heavy-duty infrastructure, we should look at adding a light-duty component to it at the site. When we started the fuel cell projects at South Coast, we were the first in the country to do that. And we launched a lot of hydrogen pilot projects. We looked at was trying to design a heavy-duty infrastructure that can accommodate light-duty. The incremental cost of adding a light-duty infrastructure to heavy-duty is much smaller than starting light-duty from scratch. Just as an example, today in some truck stops or rest stops, we'll see that heavy-duty trucks are pulling in to fill their diesel vehicles, whereas gasoline cars on another side are pulling into filling the gasoline side. So we should be looking into those configurations as well. It will add to the hydrogen highway concept. So thank you again for the opportunity to share and for these projects.
Thank you. Next caller, Mr. Eder, Harvey Eder. We can hear you. Oh, unmute yourself, Harvey. There you go.
Hello, am I being heard?
Yes, go ahead, 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Harvey Eder. I'm talking for myself, Public Solar Power Coalition. I'm a little confused. First of all, I'd like to protest these meetings, stationary and technology going on at the same time. I heard somebody, compliment staff on the technology of being able to do that. Well, that's garbage, man. We cannot participate in meetings, those of us that only have one device or one person at the same time. And you're eliminating public information and freedom of speech and consumer input, public input. That's bad, okay? And so this has got to be remedied. You got to have a meeting. You're getting a lot more public input and a lot of more issues coming up. You got to have more time allowed. I'm sorry y'all were voted in the office and whatnot to do that. And you got staff and paid to do that, okay? So that's got to be adjusted. This is illegal. It's illegal, violation of the Brown Act, etc. Okay, Ranji, and okay, the stuff with hydrogen, great problem. And there's been a war going on for 10, 20 years between the battery people and the hydrogen people. And we got a problem with waste in the batteries and this and that. And also we got to implement and have bring in the Defense Production Act under Biden. Now the VW and the 150s from Ford, they said they don't have batteries, okay? And there's a big thing about not taking them from China, bringing over to US and stuff. But we're going to bring that here. It's got to be equitably done. Okay, we've got a multi-billion-dollar stuff out in the east by Palm Springs and stuff for lithium. That's got to be included in this, and equity for low income and communities and those that have been injured, that actually have the disease and whatnot and are dying from the air pollution and the climate impact and stuff. And that's got to be structured into litigation and legislation and whatnot. Okay, so Ranji gave me support, and I'm incorporating his comments from 1 hour and 40 minutes to 1 hour and 45 minutes with him and Dr. Burke. And what Dr. Burke said is false. And the Gilchrist head counsel said he talked to me about getting run out of court, not being allowed to petition the government and bring in the Solar New Deal. And this is what was asked for February 8th by Dr. Burke of 19 Administrative Committee. We brought up that, you know, if you're breaking the law, there's a unanimous decision of Bart from 12 from the Supreme Court, and you got it's technology forcing you. Ignored, never evaluated solar. And they used to have 25% had to be solar from hydrogen, and that has to be solar electric, and it has to have the equity input also, and connected in like with the stuff for retirement for low income, like what DeLeon did. He said he was concerned about his aunt who didn't have anything but Social Security. I relate to that. All right. So equity and how this is done, and that it's got to be not just hydrogen, and the hydrogen is very hard to distribute, okay, and it's explosive and stuff like that. So there are the things to be aware of, and we got to have research into this.
Thank you so much. With that, let's entertain a motion to approve item 4.
I'll move it.
Mayor McCallum, thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Supervisor. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Bartlett,
Yes.
Mayor McCallum,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
and Chairman Buscaino.
Yes,
Motion passes 4 ayes.
fantastic. This now turn to our 5th and final item, item number 5. Item number 5 is now before us, members.
Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Impoletti. I am the manager of our demonstration group in our technology advancement office. This item I'm bringing to you today is to request approval of our 2020 annual report and 2021 plan update for our clean fuels program. Next slide. The South Coast AQMD Clean Fuels Program has achieved tremendous accomplishments in advancing technology over the past 30 plus years. And the next 30 years should be life-changing as well. Here's a list of the steps for completing the 2021 plan update for the Clean Fuels program. Next slide, please. We receive input and feedback to develop our draft plan update from several sources. We have 2 advisory committee meetings that we convene to receive input to the program direction and the project areas. Last year, we invited both ports to join our Technology Advancement Advisory Group to get direct input from these stakeholders, and they accepted. Staff has incorporated suggestions from our 2 advisory groups, other experts. We attend symposiums and conferences to get their input there, and also have from our partnerships and other stakeholders, and we incorporate those into our draft plan. Next slide, please. This figure provides a conceptual design of the wide scope of the Clean Fuels program and the relationship between our program and the incentive programs. Various stages of technology projects are funded not only to provide a portfolio of technology choices, but to achieve near-term and long-term emission reduction benefits. The Clean Fuels program typically funds projects that are in the technology readiness level ranging between 3 and 8. And once the technology is commercialized, it may be eligible for incentive funding through our various incentive programs. Next slide. Our top 4 core technologies in the Clean Fuels program are hydrogen fuel cell technology and infrastructure, engine systems and technologies, electric and hybrid technology and infrastructures, and then fueling infrastructure and deployment, primarily natural gas and renewable natural gas. And then there are a remainder of our core technologies listed below. Next slide. Staff continues to leverage funds available from state and federal agencies as well as local entities. Nearly $24.8 million that was awarded from federal, state, and local funding and was contracted in calendar year 2020. This helps staff focus on battery electric excavators and wheel loaders, zero emission delivery trucks, EV infrastructure, near zero emission natural gas and natural gas conversion systems, and air filtration at schools and residences in EJ communities, just to name a few. In addition, in calendar year 2020, we were awarded over $37 million in EPA TAG grants, although those projects were not contracted in 2020 and will be contracted later this year. Next slide, please. Here you see, as you can see from the distribution of projects that were funded, that 86% went for our top core technologies that I just mentioned there: hydrogen and fuel cell engine systems, electric and hybrid technologies, as well as infrastructure deployment of natural gas and renewable natural gas vehicles and stations. Next slide. Here are some of the key projects that we executed last year that included renewable fuel production, hydrogen fueling stations, natural gas engine development, and hybrid and electric medium and heavy duty trucks. Next slide, please. Here are also some of the key projects that were completed in 2020. Again, we see that they're in our core areas that I mentioned before. The 3 primary areas that we highlighted here are the electric hybrid technologies, hydrogen fuel cells, and some fueling stations that we supported, and also engine system development. Next slide. The South Coast AQMD strives to maintain a flexible program to address the dynamically evolving technologies and the latest progress in the state of the technologies, while balancing the needs in various technology sectors with technology readiness, emission reduction potential, and co-funding opportunities to leverage our Clean Fuels Fund. The proposed plan for 2021 is not a budget. It's a distribution of our funds that is based on our staff recommendations for future projects in the 2021 timeframe. Next slide, please. As we do every year, based on our staff projections of our potential projects coming up in the next year in 2021, is that we do make small adjustments in the distribution of our funding to accommodate those new projects. Next slide. This is our development schedule. As I indicated earlier, staff has reviewed the draft plan with the Technology Committee in October, and the draft plan and annual report with both advisory groups in our September and February meetings. With the board's approval, staff plans to submit a report to the state legislature by the end of March. Next slide. We have 2 advisory groups that I mentioned in our Clean Fuels program. The Clean Fuels Advisory Group, which was established by SB 98. This group has 13 members, experts in clean fuels technology, and Policy, or Public Health are members of that group. There are 2 new members for board approval, replacing other members who may have retired. For example, first, Keith Brandis is a 30-year veteran of the trucking industry with a diverse background in heavy truck manufacturing, engineering, sales, and marketing. Currently, he works as the Vice President of Partnership and Strategic Solution for Volvo North America. And secondly, second candidate that we're presenting is Dwight Robinson, who has owned Mortimer and Wallace Incorporated, a drayage trucking company for the last 15 years. And they operate out of both ports. Mr. Robinson also owns and operates Los Angeles Harbor Grain Terminal, an agricultural logistic business, owns and operates a few other companies in the commodity trading industries. He's also a former city councilman from the city of Lake Forest, and as we know him, as a former South Coast AQMD board member. Then our second group, the Technology Advancement Advisory Group, which is established by the South Coast AQMD board. Previously, we had 12 members, but last year we invited both ports to participate, so we increased it to 14 members. There's 1 new member that requires technology committee approval. Laura Renger currently serves as Director of Electrification and Customer Service Policy at Southern Cal Edison. Laura is responsible for the utilities regulatory and legislative policy concerning transportation electrification, building electrification, climate change, energy efficiency, and energy equity. Laura will be replacing Dawn Wilson, who has retired. Finally, Steve Cliff from CARB is leaving that post, and we have yet received a recommendation from CARB for his replacement. Next slide, please. These are the recommended actions that we're asking for today. To approve the Clean Fuels Program annual report, to adopt the Clean Fuels Plan update for 21. Also adopt a resolution finding that no duplicate projects or programs are funded by other state and local agencies. Then approve and adopt the Clean Fuels Advisory Group membership changes. Receive and file the Technology Advancement Advisory Group, membership changes, and then direct staff to forward documents to the state legislative analysts by the end of March. And that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Joe. With that, members, I don't see any hands up. We have 2 members of the public like to speak. Let's start with Harvey Etter.
Hi there. Thank you. Am I being heard?
Loud and clear. Go
Hello?
ahead. 3 minutes. We can hear you, Harvey.
Thank you. I'm Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition, etc. In reference to technology plans and being evaluated, technology and policy theme, I question that you're not addressing solar renewables to the degree you should. And this has been a problem. There's the 16 plan, the Solar New Deal, had 100 exhibits in it. I want to know specifically where your response is, other than, this Cade Shearer line there that was referred to on February 8th Administrative Committee meeting of 19 by Dr. Burke. And that just does not do it, and that we submitted the thumb drive with all of this, the 5,000 page plan, and about 20% of that's what we put in. It was never evaluated. You're supposed to do this under law, and this committee is along with all the other committees, in violation of that, guilty of that, and you're breaking the law. And there's a 12 unanimous decision of the state Supreme Court. You're referred to in the reference. Your litigation at the District 1 about BARC being technology forcing for coating manufacturers went on for 20 years, and that applies to solar, and you've never done it. With the Sunshot program, model after the moonshot to get a person to the moon in the 60s, that was done in the last 10 years under Obama, showing that all types of solar, residential, commercial, industrial, are cost effective and were done before, and it continues to go down. It takes the market, and the issue of equity and how to develop it needs to be done immediately. And we've got a big equity program. We put in there Pickety's stuff and incorporating his videos and his books, equity and ideology, and capital and ideology and capital in the 21st century. As well as Naomi Klein's books, which were not allowed to be in and not evaluated. And then the melting of the Arctic and the special issue on that in September of 19 in National Geographic, and giving it the head of the evaluating this Aaron and Fabian, and never got evaluated by district and NDCAR or EPA. This is garbage. Not only nitrous oxide up north is melting of the Arctic. This continues to go on with the fires now and everything else. And we got a new administration. We got Fine, who's a turncoat.
Thank you. Next speaker, Ranji George, 3 minutes.
Can you hear me, please?
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is Ranji George. I am a legacy member of Technology Advancement Office. And as Mr. Impuluti correctly said, we have made a substantial difference in the field of energy, transportation, clean air technologies. The world will not be the same. The technologies we laid the foundation in the mid-90s have now been acknowledged and recognized worldwide, and billions of dollars are being spent to promote it, to help meet our climate change goals and to meet local air quality, not to mention independence from big oil. So thank you, Mr. Impuluti, for continuing that legacy, and the staff, Mr. Nastri, Dr. Mayatsetsu, and Naveen, all have been very fair in the treatment of these three technologies: batteries, fuel cells, natural gas. We started doing that, but unfortunately, at the state level, there has been a pronounced battery bias last 20 years, and even at South Coast has gone very heavily into natural gas. If you look at the distribution of these funds, so fuel cells went down the drain. I hope it will be revived. And as Mr. McCallum said, the one major issue we need to address is the battery waste pollution, which I've been trying to lobby for last 8 months. There are sustainable battery pathways, and I'm just requesting the staff, if they may, to bring 4 or 5 battery recyclers. They made an excellent, staff did an excellent job in inviting a battery recycler, which has great promise. That, and along with 2 or 3 other recyclers, we should have projects with them starting right now, technology demonstration projects, so that when we arrive 15, 20 years, when these millions of batteries are ready to be, recycled or landfilled, we'll be ready. And to continue the point of cost effectiveness, let's not forget that battery recycling factories will cost hundreds of millions of dollars to install and operate. So that's a cost that should be kept in mind, that we may not recognize those costs right now, but whether it's private or social, somebody has to pay it. So let's not, when we talk about hydrogen infrastructure and the cost of it, there is no major waste issues, at least definitely not in the order of magnitude less, I would say, from batteries as for hydrogen fuel cell. So to echo what Mr. McCallum said, we should be more leaning towards hydrogen fuel cells. And I appreciate both.
Thank you so much for your comments. Members, I'll entertain a motion to approve item number 5.
Move it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Second, anyone?
Bartlett, second.
Thank you, Supervisor. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Bartlett,
Yes.
Mayor McCallum,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
and Chairman Buscaino.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 ayes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, members, staff. Appreciate you. Any other business before this committee? I don't see any hands. Okay, let's go to now turn to general public comment. Members of the public like to speak on a non-agenda item, please come forward now. Do I see any hands? We have one hand raised, and Mr. Eder.
Hello, am I being heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm Harvey Eder. I'm speaking for myself, for PSPC, etc. I want to delve more into the concept of technology and policy. I see the state has been dragging its feet for decades on both, especially when they're trying to implement, evaluate solar renewables. And we've been involved very much in the control issue. For 10 years. Well, we've been doing this. 40 years ago, we started the Santa Cruz Alternate Energy Co-op. Okay, that was after the Yom Kippur War, the 73 war, where there was an oil embargo and the price of oil quadrupled. All right, so we got all the research from ERDA before DOE, the Energy Research and Development on Solar and Renewables, from everywhere. And we started in our community. We went to the state. We did this with the statewide and nationally with the anti-nuclear pro-solar movement, the Abalone Alliance, etc. And worked with the PUC consultants and with Turn. There's a consumer group up there that saved tens of billions of dollars. Sylvia Siegel. I had the first solar job, 77, 78 with Santa Cruz County. A solar education specialist, and taught it at the university and community college, etc. Worked in the local industry. This stuff's been going on for hundreds. The gas company wiped out solar in 16. There was a freeze. They didn't have controls, and they put in free systems, installed them for free, and wiped them out. That was over 100 years ago. The investor-owned utilities have got conflicts of interest. They're tied into fossil fuels, which is stored solar over hundreds of years from plants and animals, fossilized, all right? And we got to live on our income, not our savings, and we're polluting the hell out of our environment. And it's negative costs in cancer, asthma, and climate. And we can't mess around with it. We got a new administration. We got existential stuff happening, and conspiracy theories that are totally irrational and threatening our survival. This has got to be dealt with soon, and we got to do something. And to run this stuff out of our courts, which happened, and then that y'all been sitting on it for over a year, not doing nothing. That is in fact supporting what happened, and then to come up with lies that we were talked to. I don't know who else was, but we sure weren't. This is really outrageous, actionable, and we're whistleblowers. That you.
Okay, Mr. Ranji George, you're up. 3 minutes.
You can hear me?
Loud and clear.
Right. Thank you. I don't, because of the echo, I don't realize whether I'm being heard or not. Thank you. Thank you, board members and the staff, for all the work you put in. I have one request, strong request. Starting 2021, is South Coast should be very strongly supportive of greenhouse gas emission reductions. The global warming is a very serious issue. We know we have these clean air goals to be met, but let's not focus on what the world is now deeply concerned, very deeply concerned on climate change and climate survival. And last 20 years, to credit of ARB, they have been very proactive. Every statement, almost every meeting, they have agenda items addressing greenhouse gases. But unfortunately, our agency, yes, it's laudable to meet the immediate clean air, but we have a role in climate change. And I hope the new board members will bring that energy to that and join Mr. Biden's attempts to bring this issue to the world and resolve it. Southern California is a big area, maybe bigger than many European countries. So surely this agency can use their website, their presentation to tell them these are the things we can do, as well as clean the local air. So I urge you to give more emphasis on global warming issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. So with that, members, that concludes today's agenda.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, before the meeting concludes, I would just like to take this opportunity to let the committee know that today is the last day for Naveen Berry. And as many of you
who
know,
approved that?
Well, it was Matt. That's who did. Matt did a terrible job on that.
I didn't see that motion come through. Go ahead, Wayne.
I just wanted to have an opportunity to recognize Naveen for his more than 30 years service here at the district. Obviously, it's going to be a tremendous loss for him.
Yes.
And we know that Naveen is really leaving to address so many things in his life, but he's always welcome back here. But I just wanted to raise that attention to you, Mr. Chairman, in case anybody else wanted to say a few words to him.
Thank you, Wayne. Well, Naveen, talk about a subject matter expert in this space. You have led with such grace and passion in this field of moving towards embracing technologies and embracing and looking out for the future of our district and in Southern California, our basin, and doing all we can to help improve the quality of life of our residents, and bringing the key people to the table. And we're going to be a loss of your knowledge and your abilities to help continue our efforts to reduce emissions here in South Coast. So best of luck to you. What a tremendous loss.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Your reaction was exactly the same one I had at the MSRC yesterday when he told us he would be leaving. He's certainly served us well, and we're going to miss him.
Thank you, Larry, for sharing that. Okay, Naveen, would you like to share some thoughts?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. And it's been my absolute pleasure. And between Matt and Wayne and Jill's guidance and the committee's guidance, I think I've managed to get a lot of success in following up on technologies, and really excited about some of the nascent zero emission heavy duty technologies that are now getting commercialized.
Yes.
So it's been my absolute honor and pleasure. And want to thank everybody who's helped me, especially the staff that does it on a weekly, daily, monthly basis, and everybody else who's helped guide me into the work that I've managed to accomplish. And it's really been my honor. So thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate you. Thank you for your service to AQMD. Okay, members, with that, we are now adjourned, and our next meeting, if you can note, will be held on March 19th at 12 p.m. Thank you all for joining us, and good luck to you, Naveen. We're going to miss you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.